Welcome to the Sutlifian Report. Joe is an expert in the fields of national security, counterterrorism, and foreign affairs. He has been featured on all the major cable networks, including Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, CNBC, C-SPAN. And Kaufman has served as a consultant to different government agencies, and he's been instrumental in getting U.S.-based terror charities shut down and terror-related individuals put behind bars. Well, thank you for joining us, Mr. Kaufman.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
I have to say, your article, Florida Mosque Promotes Books Calling for Violence Against Jews. It's powerful and shameful, also in the sense that it seems like no one's paying attention to what is happening. Can you give us a little background on the Masjid Jamaat al-Mu'minin?
Yeah, so basically the mosque was founded in 1995. For the past decade, they've been doing major renovations on the mosque. They have a very large property, and their plan was and is to have the mosque, a big Islamic center with a children's school and the whole works. And it seems like the community has gone along with this, no problem. I'll tell you also, the Imam Izar Khan. So at the time when they were beginning to have these renovations done, or to raise money for these renovations, and of course these renovations, if you look at the size of the property, cost a lot of money. Now, I don't know that any of that money went towards purposes of terrorism, but certainly at the time when the imam was indicted for raising money for terrorism, he was charged with working with his family members to raise around $50,000 for the Pakistani Taliban, specifically for the purpose of murdering American troops overseas. And that was in May 2011. He spent 20 months in a federal detention center, and as he was behind bars, they're beginning to raise major funds for this new renovations and these new sections of this Islamic center, which is located in Margate, Florida.
Wow. Your article exposes not only are those in the mosque posing possible terror threats, but they're inviting people to the mosque who have been influential over others who have been found guilty of terrorism?
Well, look, and I think anybody that watches your show probably understands the state of Florida has been especially in South Florida, it's been a major hotspot for terrorist activity.
Yes.
The 9/11 hijackers passed through South Florida. One of the individuals that was at this mosque that I had mentioned in my piece was a guy named Shafayat Muhammad. He's the imam of a center called Darul Uloom. There are Darul Ulooms across the world. They've had Taliban pass through there. It's become a hotspot for Taliban. Definitely the leaders of the Taliban have gone to Darul Ulooms, but it's been a radical center throughout the world. And there happens to be one major one located in Pembroke Pines, Florida. And this imam did come to a groundbreaking ceremony at the Masjid Jamaat al-Mu'minin, MJM for short, and he had a number of terrorists pass through his mosque, Al-Qaeda related terrorists. One guy you may have heard of, it was a guy named Adnan El Shukri Juma. He became later, he was a prayer leader at Darul Uloom, and he became a commander for Al-Qaeda. Indeed, he was at one point the #2 leader of Al-Qaeda out of Pakistan. And he was killed by the Pakistani military around 2000, in I think 2014, and but he was the individual that ordered the New York City subway bombings, which thank God was a failed attack. But he was
Yes.
a big leader, but he was a prayer leader at this mosque. His father was very influential in these Al Qaeda or pre Al Qaeda circles out of Brooklyn during the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center before 9/11, the first attack on the World Trade Center. So you had Adnan Shukrajuma. He was a prayer leader. Then you had the dirty bomber Jose Padilla, who was a student of this Imam Shafayat Muhammad, and as well you had individuals who were plotting an attack out of the mosque itself. One was named Imran Mandi. I believe he was a leader at the mosque as well, and he and two other individuals were plotting attacks on the power grid, the South Florida or Miami power grid, a bunch of Jewish businesses. They even had their sights on Mount Rushmore at one point. I don't know how they would accomplish that, but they went to prison as well. At least two of them went to prison. So all that activity in this Darul Uloom place, and the leader of this Darul Uloom, Shafayat Muhammad, was at the groundbreaking ceremony. I should mention Shafayat Muhammad himself. He was thrown off a number of Broward County boards for his incitement against homosexuals.
Wow. Well, the shocking thing is what is now on the shelves in their online library. Saeed Shabi is a Meccan Muslim who I co-write with. He wants to do exactly what you did in this article. Expose those who claim to be moderates and practitioners of, quote, safe Islam as being opposite and what I would consider, I don't like the term radical or extremist. I prefer the term truly devout. That's just my thought process. Mr. Kaufman, please tell our listeners what you found in that online library.
And before I do that, I just want to mention one thing. With regards to when Izar Khan, who is the imam of the mosque, when he was charged with this crime, I remember I had led a rally outside of that mosque, and we were calling for this mosque to be shut down. And unfortunately, and we may get into this, but unfortunately, that would not be the case. That mosque is thriving. But here, I just want to mention with regards to the indictment. I should have mentioned it before. So this is a quote from the indictment. Izar is a Pakistani Taliban sympathizer who worked with his father Hafiz and others to collect and deliver money for the Pakistani Taliban. Izar provided and attempted to provide material support and resources, knowing and intending that they be used in preparation for and in carrying out a conspiracy to murder, kidnap, and maim persons in a foreign country. So I just want anybody who's watching this to understand that this is a serious individual. It wasn't just happenstance that the Justice Department or the FBI wanted to go after this particular individual or his family. So regarding the texts, and they're still online if anybody wants to see that. I think it's margatemasjid.com or margatemosque.com. Again, it's MJAM if anybody wants to see these books online. So there were a number of books. I quoted a number of them in my piece. I don't know how many of these quotes you want to hear, but definitely one that I thought was most interesting and there were a number of these, but one in particular is called Tafsir Ibn Kathir. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it mentions, and I mentioned this in my piece, it mentions Jews nearly 800 times in the piece. And I can tell you that I'm pretty sure in viewing the book, I didn't go through the entire book. I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of pages for most of these documents online. And there were, I should mention, there was 44 documents. I think only one was totally in Arabic. The rest have have English language. I don't know Arabic, so you know, it's very easy with the English there. So here's a quote from that particular book that again mentions Jews 800 times, and I don't believe anywhere in positive terms. So quote, the Jews, and this is skipping around, but I'll just read this out. The Jews will continue to suffer humiliation at the hands of all who interact with them. You will find them, the Jews, the greediest of mankind for life, greedy to live longer because they know their evil end. Beware of the Jews, your enemies, lest they distort the truth for you in what they convey to you. Therefore, do not be deceived by them, for they are liars, treacherous, and disbelievers. Allah forbids his believing servants from having Jews and Christians as friends because they are enemies of Islam and its people. May Allah curse them. Allah cast terror in the hearts of the Jews. Allah decreed that the Jews would be punished in the life of this world and face the torment of the fire of hell. Now, there's a lot of quotes. I won't go into all of them. There's one more that I think is important because it talks about committing violence against Jews. And people may have seen this. It's considered one of the holiest texts in the religion Islam. And indeed, I should say that all of these texts, all 44 of these texts that they have online, I am sure this Imam Izar Khan and his congregants consider to be religious texts, including the holiest texts in the religion of Islam. So one thing, this Sahih Bukhari, which is considered to be a very important, maybe the most important hadith in Islam, probably second to the Quran itself. So it says in there, quote, and maybe people have heard this before. I know I've seen it many, many times. It is the Jews who are being tormented in their graves. The hour will not be established until you fight with the Jews, and the stone behind which a Jew will be hiding will say, "O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me, so kill him," end quote. So there are many other quotes, talking about Jews as being, pigs and apes, that they were turned into pigs and apes. There's talk in these texts of female circumcision, partaking in jihad, which I'm sure we're going to mention, but we're not talking about just any, a lot of Muslim groups, mainstream groups, they like to say, because this word jihad is certainly a very charged word. When people hear the word jihad, they think of violence. Certainly that's been how it's been portrayed, through the media. So when these mainstream organizations talk about how jihad in general talks about some kind of a struggle, that's not what these books are talking about. These books are talking about, now they do mention that, I need to mention that they do mention that there is this general struggle, which is called jihad. At least a book or two may mention that in a sentence or two. But overwhelmingly, when you see this word hundreds, if not thousands of times, they're talking about committing violence. I'm sure we'll get into that. And talk in these texts, these particular texts on this mosque's library or web library, punishing homosexuals with death, chopping off hands, stoning women who are accused by their husbands of adultery. Just being accused of adultery could lead to stoning for women, according to these texts, and also vilifying Hindus, not just vilifying Jews and Christians, but also going after Hindus, and also going after Muslims themselves who don't associate with this type of radical belief. So those are basically the things that I found in these texts online, and there's many, many, many other quotes that I can read from regarding these, but that's basically the gist of it.
And this is the scary truth of the matter. What bothers me the most when I hear some of these quotes is that people think this is not what we're not in every mosque, but Bukhari is in every mosque, and it is he's the most important it's the most important hadith that there is, and they will say that. I think Sahih Muslim comes next. It's insane.
Also very similar in what's in those texts in Sahih Muslim. In fact, I don't want to cut you off, but in fact, these statements, at least in English, and that's what I'm going by. So they can't really claim that I'm mistranslating this, because this is their own text that they're portraying to the public as translations. I don't know what it means in most of the Arabic, but in Sahih Muslim, as in Sahih Bukhari, as in many of the other hadiths, which you will find in this library. In fact, my eyes were open to some extent. I had gone through many of these things in the past, but I have never seen it in my past, at least in doing this for the number of years that I've been doing this, maybe over 15 years. But I had been exposed to Bukhari and Muslim, but there are a lot of other texts in this web library that go beyond that. But however, they repeat these quotes over and over again.
Yes.
So it's not just in Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, but it's in a lot of these other texts as well, repeated. One of the quotes that I had mentioned, talking about how you can't be a friend of the Jews because they say that Jews are your enemies, speaking to Muslims. Now there's a lot of Muslims out there that will say that the quote in the Quran, which says, do not befriend Jews or Christians, that is not what people hear, that it's actually something different, that you don't make them allies, or you don't, there's some kind of excuse made for that quote. And again, I'm only quoting the text that they put out in English. I don't know Arabic, and when I need Arabic translated, I have translators to professional translators who will do that for me. But regarding the English itself, when it says do not befriend Jews or Christians, maybe it's somewhat debatable in the Quran, although I don't think it is. I think it says it black and white, again, in their English translations. But here in these texts on this website of this mosque who pretends to be moderate, with an imam who does do interfaith events, by the way, the same imam that was allegedly involved in raising tens of thousands of dollars for the Taliban to murder American troops overseas. They say specifically in these texts to not befriend Jews because they are enemies. That's quote enemies. It's not sugarcoating the situation. It's in black and white in their text that Jews are enemies, and that's the reason why you don't befriend them. So
it's well said. I'm working on my next book and have been going over that particular verse as well. That's going to be a quote in my next book. It's shocking. Even their commentaries on this particular verse basically scream at Muslims not to befriend Jews or Christians for the reason that would make them guilty of shirk, which is polytheism, and that is one of the highest crimes in Islam. So I want to commend you for writing this article.
Thanks.
This is the stuff that people need to hear. They don't realize this is in your average mosque. Well, this mosque is known for, I guess I would say, its radical connections. But if you look at the books he's citing, you will probably find them in your average mosque. Now, in the end of your article, you propose that the DHS and law enforcement need to be aware of the danger of this particular facility poses. What do you think it will take to wake people up?
It's a very good question. And I'm not sure I have that answer for you, because certainly America was woken up at the time with regards to 9/11. I mean, every American had to be, had to be awake seeing the towers fall. So, and it's the reason why I got into this. I took it personally. I grew up in New York. I used to visit the towers with my grandparents, and I took it very personally. But I'm sure most Americans, if not all, took it at least somewhat personally. Here's some kind of outside group coming from foreign nations coming into our country and destroying one of the most important centers in not only in our country, not only in New York, but in the entire world. All the world's finances running out of these buildings. So after a few years, of course, certainly after a few months, right after it happened, you would see flags flying from cars. I remember noticing like many cars with flags attached to the windows. But after a while, after a few months, the flags were gone and it was business as usual. And as goes the years, people tend to forget, or maybe think it's it's something that's not going to happen again, or it's out of the ordinary. However, the texts on this website, what they do, and I mentioned in the article, they are inviting young Muslims. They're speaking to young Muslims who may think that the world has something against them, that their religion is being attacked, or they're being attacked for being Muslim itself. And what they're doing is they're inviting these individuals. They're actually not just inviting them, they're mandating it to do jihad, meaning specifically to take the law into their own hands, to take a plane flight, maybe a one-way ticket to a foreign nation that they may have never traveled to. This has happened many times in the past. Purchase arms, purchase firearms, and to murder in the name of their religion, because they're being told by their elders or somebody that they've gotten in touch with, or maybe by the internet, or maybe through this web library, that it's the greatest deed possible, or at least one of the greatest deeds possible as a Muslim, to do this jihad. In fact, it says here on their website that is, quote, an obligatory duty for Muslim males to do this jihad. And again, I'm not talking about this generalized jihad that CARE and some other mainstream Muslim groups discuss. I'm talking about specifically what it's saying in these texts, that they are to do this holy war, a violent act in the name of their religion, to go overseas and kill people in the name of their religion. And so it says that it's an obligatory duty, and that if they abandon jihad, meaning this violent jihad, according to these texts, again, it's right in their texts on this website, in the very least on this from this mosque, quote, if they abandon this, quote, Islam is destroyed, and quote, Allah will smite them with humiliation. So males who are able to fight, physically able, they are mandated to go overseas. Now, that doesn't mean that all Muslims are doing that, but there have been a number of Muslims from Western nations and outside the West that have, and including inside the from the United States, from England, from France, from Germany, et cetera, who have gone over to whether it's Libya or Egypt or Syria or Afghanistan or any of the other hotspots that have dealt with this issue, and they've gone over and fought, even if they've never been there in the past, because they believe that their religion is mandating it. And that's what's so scary about this, that these things that are in here, they are living documents. They speak to Muslims of today. They're not viewed as things that happened in the past, although that may be part of it. They're viewed as things that they need to do ASAP, and that's dangerous. And that's why this mosque is a danger. And that's why we say this mosque not only should be shut down because of the fact that their imam was allegedly raising money for a terrorist group overseas to kill Americans, and the fact that their congregation was praising this imam while he was being brought up on these charges. So obviously everybody's going along with this. But the fact that they put up this stuff on their site, that should send, in the very least, red flags to authorities. But I believe that this place is a danger and a threat to society and to the community. Of course, there's many more like them. This one chose to go public with these texts.
That right there is the real crux of the matter. I did see you had another article out there, and I do want to get into that other article. You told me you were going to have a couple out this week, and I did catch it. You do a lot of writing and researching. You exposed that a man convicted of providing material support to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad somehow got into Israel, and I mean that's highly shocking. Can you tell us who Hatem Najib Faris is and how you learned about his trip to Israel?
So it's very simple how I learned about his trip. It's from his own social media. But regarding Faris, if you had heard of Sami Al-Arian, I'm sure. So the professor from the University of South Florida during the 90s, who he was a co-founder of, this is Al-Arian that I'm talking about. He was a co-founder of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and he had a major input into the founding of many of the large Muslim organizations inside the United States and Canada, such as the Islamic Society of North America. He was one of the co-founders of that's the largest Muslim organization in North America, and he had involvement in other groups. But anyway, he had co-founded Palestinian Islamic Jihad overseas. He came to the United States, and as he was a professor at USF, he had worked to create a terrorist network for Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Temple Terrace, Florida, which is an offshoot of the Tampa Bay. It's part of the Tampa Bay area in Florida, Southwest Florida. He had founded a mosque, a children's school, a think tank, and a charity, all according to the indictment against these individuals, raising funds and helping to finance things like suicide bombings overseas. Now today, the mosque and the children's school are still in existence. In fact, they're very close in proximity to each other. And this, I would say, this, like the last mosque that we were talking about, the Masjid Jamaat al-Muslimin, this particular mosque, which is called Al-Qassam, also the Islamic Community of Tampa, ICT. This particular mosque also has a huge plot of land over there, and it doesn't seem like the community is that concerned about it. And so this particular mosque that Al-Arian founded, it was named Al-Qassam because Izzeddin al-Qassam, who was an individual from the 1930s, he was important because it's named after him, because this individual had he was the inspiration for Palestinian Islamic Jihad, also an inspiration for Hamas. Hamas's militant organization is called Al-Qassam military brigades, Al-Qassam brigades. Their rockets are called Qassam rockets, named after this individual.
Yes.
This individual was calling for violent jihad or a holy war against Jews or Israel in the 30s. We're talking about before the new state of Israel was created in 47, 48. So this individual had led violent attacks against the Jewish community and as well the British, who were a big controlling force in that area at the time, and he became an inspiration for these militant Muslim organizations, specifically the two that are located in Gaza. And so this mosque that Al-Arian had founded was named after this individual. And so you have Al-Arian and 5 other individuals become indicted for 7 other individuals, 4 who were inside the United States at the time, who went to trial, and 4 who were outside the United States, who were in areas like Damascus that would not extradite them, and there certainly is no extradition treaty between the U.S. and Assad. So they were living in Syria at the time, and there was nothing to bring them to the United States. And so here you have this trial and the indictments saying that these individuals were working to raise money for Palestinian Islamic Jihad inside the Tampa area, and this money was going to things like suicide attacks inside Israel. And Hatem Fariz was one of the individuals that was convicted for this, as was Al-Arian.
Wow. When I read your article, I was shocked that he wasn't deported along with Sami Al-Arian in 2015. I watched that. I watched him get deported, and I couldn't understand why he was the only one then. But I'm guessing you're also surprised, especially from what you learned about his trip.
Well, regarding the trip, I was surprised that he got into Israel, because I know in flying to Israel, me myself, they're very thorough about interviews. They knew things about me, and they asked questions where they wanted the right answers from me, but they knew things about me before I got to the airport, I believe, because it seems like the questioning was along those lines. So I would think that someone like this, just a simple Google search would lead to the indictment, would lead to many articles I've written about him in the past, or a few others like Steve Emerson. So I would think that they would see right away who this guy was, and I would think that he would be on some kind of list for them. When he went to Israel, it was just a short time before his visit that Palestinian Islamic Jihad they were warring with Israel. They were sending rockets into Israel, and Israel was responding shortly before he arrived over there as well. While he was there, and I showed there's like a timeline, because you could see him talking about the different places that he's visiting in Israel, and the different days that he's doing this. One of the places that he visited was the shrine for Izzeldin Al-Qassam. As I said, the inspiration for Islamic Jihad, for Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the organization that he is or was a member of. He also visited one of the grave of one of his co-conspirators, one of his alleged co-conspirators from his trial for the when they were being charged with these crimes. So it just shows when he's visiting these places that his loyalties still lie. He wasn't in Israel for any type of positive reason. He was there he was there in part, at least, to pray by the by the graves of people involved with Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So how he got in there, I'm surprised. I'm hoping he's never going to get in there again. I'm trying to make sure of that, and I think I'll be successful if I haven't already been successful in stopping that for the future. Regarding him not being deported with Al-Arian, that's simple because Al-Arian was not born in the United States, but Naji Fariz or Hatem Fariz
Oh,
was.
okay. I didn't know he was born in the United States.
So
That
because of the fact that he was born here, now there have been cases in the past where the United States has extradited individuals from the United States, even though they were American citizens, if they've been involved in some kind of heavy-duty crimes. But that was not the case with regards to Fariz. So it's a reason why I'm personally surprised, pleasantly surprised, that they took him off the plane flying from Lisbon. So he takes a plane from or wherever he started from. I'm assuming the United States, and he somehow gets to the airport in Lisbon, and was it Portugal, and he winds up in Israel. Now, I don't know if he went to Jordan first or if he flew right into Tel Aviv, but regardless of where he flew into from Lisbon, he still had to pass through Israeli authorities, border authorities, in order to get into Israel itself. So when he's on
it's like they were a day short in their security initiative that day. I'm just kind of surprised when I look at that. Like you said, he gets pulled off. I wasn't sure. I thought you had said on the return flights.
On the return flight, he was pulled off by the American authorities.
By the Americans.
Not by the Israeli authorities.
How does he get on? He's a man convicted of aiding terrorists. Shouldn't he be on a no-fly list? I mean, these are.
Well, I'm trying to. Now that this has happened, I'm hopefully I or others are successful in getting him on that type of list. But these lists, the no-fly list, they're somewhat controversial because there have been cases. I've heard of cases or read about cases of people that have gotten onto these no-fly lists that maybe shouldn't have gotten on there, who had a name similar to somebody they placed there. Although I would say this is the type of individual that should be on a no-fly list. Why is he allowed to fly around? I think most of these individuals who have been involved in this type of activity are allowed to take flights. So I do believe that he's the type of individual that should be on some kind of no-fly list, but unfortunately, that's not how America has handled this type of situation for a lot of individuals, not just him. And there's one individual who actually credits me for putting him on a no-fly list. He was an imam in Boca Raton, and he was upset. He was upset of the fact. He was upset. He was upset about the fact that he had to drive places because he couldn't get on a plane. But I'm not sure that, I don't know how many individuals have to deal with that. The head of CARE, one of the heads of CARE, the head of CARE Florida, he had gone to court regarding this because he was or is one of those individuals who has been who keeps on getting stopped every time he takes a flight, and there was a court that actually stated that it's unconstitutional to have these no-fly lists. So I don't know. I think they should be on no-fly list. I believe they should not be in the United States. Period. They should, if it were up to me, they'd all stay behind bars. But that's not the case for Fariz. Fariz wasn't deported because Fariz is an American citizen. There's an article you'll be seeing in front page about that I just wrote. Hopefully it's out tonight.
Okay.
Of an individual that had threatened the life of President Trump. He was brought up in the Muslim Brotherhood. He was involved with Osama bin Laden and Osama bin Laden's mentor Abdullah Azzam, and he comes to the border of the United States, fleeing from Egypt when Sisi takes over Egypt, and he's allowed to stay in the United States, and he was born in the United States, but they did detain him, and now he's making threats against the president. So for me, those types of individuals should, in the very least, be behind bars, if not still deported. Even if they're American citizens. If you have an extradition treaty with a nation, and a nation believes that this individual is involved in nefarious activities overseas, such as this is an individual who threatened President Trump was, then
just send them there. Be done with it.
send them there and be done with it. And I'm sure maybe the ACLU will complain. I'm sure CARE will complain, but I'm sure the vast majority of the American public, if not the world, understands that this type of individual shouldn't be around people. Period.
Well, thank you for joining us, Joe. I'm going to put this video up as soon as I can, and I'll send you the link to share out. Thank you very much. Please keep doing the work that you're doing. It's very, very important.
Absolutely. God bless. Take care. Thank you.